take some calls on Lebanon. David is in Camden. David, you're on the air.
Hello there. It's just the way that I see it. There seems to be an inversion of a moral compass that a lot of people see the Middle East through the wrong lens. Mm-hmm. And the only way that I can describe it is if we were in England and we were experienced on the 7th of October an attack that was perpetrated by a medieval barbaric organisation actually committing a genocide, and on the 8th of October that's supported by another one of Iranians, an Iranian proxy, by the launch of rockets indiscriminately into Israel. Probably the most prominent of which killed 12 Israeli children playing football. And since that period of time, there's been tit-for-tat stuff going on. And Israel now responds to the fact that between 60 to 80,000, I don't know what the numbers are, of people who've had to be relocated and living in hotels away from their homes. The same, by the way, on the Lebanese side, but twice as many people. On the Lebanese side, it's 110,000 people. Yeah, and that's absolutely shocking as well. And unfortunately, that country has been hijacked by an Iranian proxy, another death cult. Look at the charters of these organizations. You know, jihad isn't a spa treatment. What they're looking at doing is to destroy the state of Israel. And it's not just about destroying the state of Israel. It's about destroying and killing every Jew on the planet. And then the infidel. That's how I see it. So I say, God bless the IDF, God bless Israel, and they should have done it a lot earlier. It was the most targeted attack against a prescribed terrorist organisation. Except lots of innocent people were caught up in it. And that is tragic. You know, people. So it's not that targeted, is it? I mean, if innocent people die, it's not that targeted. Hang on, let me finish. Yeah. If Israel makes a mistake, you see what happens. If they make one mistake, the objective of these organisations is to destroy the state of Israel, to commit another Holocaust there. They can't afford to make a mistake. And war is a terrible, terrible thing. And anybody who loses a life, who is an innocent person, regardless of whether they're children, women, it's wrong, it's terrible. But nobody wants war. These organisations, they are prescribed to destroy. Yeah. Please, but if nobody wants war, then maybe one shouldn't perpetuate it. I mean, I don't have to tell you, Matt. You're a very smart guy. You know what the emblem of the Houthi flag is? You know what it says? You know what it says. What does it say? You tell me. I've forgotten. I'm sure it's not very nice about Israel. No. Well, it's death to America, death to Israel. But here's so I don't want to get into I haven't got the time to get into a holistic conversation about this as we always do. But I would just say this, that of course Hezbollah was humiliated and terrified by the sophistication of these attacks. And if you're in the kind of intelligence bomb making community, you think this is extraordinary, right? No one has ever done anything like this. But I just wonder whether all the time these military measures are actually advancing the cause, not just forget about peace, but of Israel's safety in the long term. Because when Israel's been safe, it's been safe because it's made deals with its neighbors, right? So whether it's Jordan or Egypt, Lebanon to some extent because it's Hezbollah, not the Lebanese government that's doing this. If you do this, do you just perpetuate the war? Does it become the forever war? Is that good for Israel at the end of the day? I'm not going to let you answer it because if you answer it, we're going to be here. But I'm just putting that question out there. Okay.
Nick in Elstree, good afternoon.
Thanks for having me on, Ali.
Pleasure.
My answers are yes to your first and no to your second, and I wish it was the other way round. Heading for war.
Gosh.
Israel has now, I think, had enough attacks from Lebanon, Hezbollah, directed at Israel, have been significant. Your researcher before, which I think is very important. It's something that sort of agitates a lot of the Jewish population. So I'm in northwest London and got family, etc.
Yeah.
Now, people forget that the volume of rockets that have come over. The issue that sort of concerns me is the number of rockets that have come over have been significant, but they've been intercepted.
Yes.
Now, the rockets that have been sent over have been completely They were going for a hospital. They don't care where it goes for, okay? Now, the fact that they got intercepted and that's limited the casualties and fatalities on the Israel side is not Israel's fault. But when Israel attacks, I won't mention your co-presenter in terms of his views, but Israel, when they did their attacks on the walkie-talkies and pagers, I think it was phenomenal. That was discriminative. It was not indiscriminative. When you have war, there are going to be fatalities. If Israel went and bombed a shopping centre, they'd be vilified. They don't do that specifically for targets. Fortunately, the extremists, the Fatah and Hamas, they don't want peace. Israel would be delighted if they could have peace, but you cannot reason.
Nick. I would have said that I could understand that if it was Ehud Olmert in charge. But come on, not Benjamin Netanyahu, but some of the complete right-wingers in his party who actually want to see the expansion of settlements in the West Bank to top the 500,000 people that are already there. I mean, come on, it's not realistic. I mean, Hamas don't want peace, nor does Netanyahu and his cronies.
The only thing I would say, and I disagree vehemently in the expansion of settlements, it is wrong to be doing it. That is completely cool, and I disagree with it.
They don't care, Nick. They don't care about what you and I think.
It's true, but I think the problem is that it's been on for nearly a year now. I can't see any solution. All that's happening is the can is being kicked down the road.
Yep.
There's going to be a bloody war now.
Yes.
I mean, it will calm down for 20 years. Hamas and Hezbollah will rebuild their infantry and their military capability. Iran will fund them, pick off again in 20 years' time. I don't see how you solve this. I don't think it is. I just don't, the diplomatic efforts that have been undertaken really to try and stop it haven't managed to have any success.
Nick, I think you're right, and you painted a very, very bleak picture, and frankly, I agree with you 100%. Now, let me ask you this, Nick. When you talked about the fact that Israel did the pager and the walkie-talkie attacks, by the way, they're not claiming responsibility. Neither are they denying it either, right? So plausible deniability, whatever you want to call it. Now, what do you say? You said they were targeted, and I actually think you've got a point there. But what do you say to Volker Turk, the UN's High Commissioner for Human Rights, who said on Friday, denouncing the attacks, and said this: international humanitarian law prohibits the use of booby-trap devices in the form of apparently harmless portable objects. And he told the Security Council this, and I quote, "It is a war crime to commit violence intended to spread terror amongst civilians." Do you think he's completely off the mark there, Nick?
He's 100% off the mark. You know what I would do? I wouldn't, if I was Israel, stick two fingers up and say, sorry for saying that, but I'd say stick two fingers up and say, when those rockets, the rockets that have been fired from Hezbollah in Lebanon, if Israel didn't have the Iron Dome, casualties and fatalities would be absolutely catastrophic. Would the world then turn around and go, oh, God, they've committed war crime? This is war. They're not going in, they're not using chemical warfare, they're not going into schools, they're not just blitzing everywhere. Mark my words, okay? Israel has got one of the strongest armies in the world. Well, it has got military capability.
Yes.
Is so significant. If they wanted to completely obliterate Lebanon, they could. They don't want
I get it, Nick. I mean, some people would argue and say, well, in Gaza, they have not really been very targeted in their attacks. I guess the counter would be, well, they're trying to find people in tunnels. It's not easy. And innocent civilians get killed because Hamas shields behind them. But, Nick, on your point about this being a targeted attack against Hezbollah operatives, I think you've got a very, very strong point. Unfortunately, people do die in these situations, including, very, very sadly, young children. Nick, thank you for your call. Matt in Oxford, good afternoon.
Hi, yes, nice to speak to you. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.
My feelings around this are that the bigger problem, in a way, in the long term, diplomatically, for Israel, is the issues it has within its allies and the divisions that we have around the ethics of their behaviour. Their enemies have always been there, but it's very difficult for Israel to do anything other than paranoid and extremely defensive if it knows that its greatest allies are busy quarrelling about the ethics of its behaviour. I'm not saying that the ethics of its behaviour are right or wrong, just that in terms of the balance of power, that's very significant. So, though it's kind of radical and kind of crazy, and I thought it months ago, one of the things that Israel could do, particularly knowing that it has that great military force, is to withdraw and stand ready and armed, because that would unite pretty much everybody around the renewed ethical position, and that's their greatest weakness.
But Matt, do they give two hoots about ethics? What they care about is the protection and the security of their own people, which Benjamin Netanyahu, playing the Israeli hard man, focused on security, utterly and patently failed to deliver, because October the 7th resulted in the deaths of 1,200 Israeli citizens. So he's on the back foot. He also knows that if there is a peace agreement here, in any way, shape or form, he'll be out of office very soon. And Hamas know that on their side too. So there is no basis for ethical conduct here, is there, on any side?
Well, I suppose all I'm thinking of, and I see your point entirely, and of course, I mean, I can't imagine the kind of generational trauma.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and, not just over 10s or 50 or 100, but for the Jewish people or race, thousands of years, and their placement geographically, and their vulnerability, and their need for strength, and so on. I get that, and I also understand from what I've heard from you guys that Netanyahu is a long way from popular within his own people. So there's an awful internal struggle, which is about his ego and about his place.
It's about retaining power, Matt, and that is fundamentally the thing.
Absolutely,
absolutely. And that's the danger.
Go on. Absolutely, I agree. But surely in the long term, the power and the security for Israel beyond the weaponry lies in the certainty.
Well, I agree with you there, but then you have to have partners to make agreements with, like in the late 70s they did with Egypt, because there was a partner there for peace. Egypt then promptly got kicked out of its Arab alliance because people felt that it had sold out to Israel, and that's exactly what the concern was about Saudi Arabia with the Abraham Accords finding its own peace agreement with Israel too. We live in some sort of hope, Matt. I'm not sure it's going to happen in my lifetime, though. Matt, thank you for your call. John in Caerphilly, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I think you're presenting Israel as being in charge of the development of the situation in the Middle East, but I see it as everything, all the buttons are being pressed by Iran. I think we can stop talking about Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthi and put the responsibility where it belongs with Iran. And the only way to get, while Iran can hide behind their terror groups, they're not going to be. There's nobody going to talk peace. If somebody wants to talk peace, it has to be talked with Iran.
I agree with you.
Groups.
I agree with you, John, and I think that that's absolutely fundamentally correct. But do you think, therefore, that if Iran, as we know, does support the proxy groups, including not only Hezbollah but the Houthis and also Hamas, that there should be a direct conflagration between Israel and Iran? And if there was, heaven knows where that could lead, because the Iranians, according to some reports, have now got 60% enrichment of uranium, which is not quite weapons grade, but well on the way.
Yeah, well, we know that. That's inevitable. They're going to have it. And I mean, the thing is that to prevent Iran triggering a nuclear war, they should be taken out now, not waiting to see what they're going to do.
Well, taken out. I mean, this is where, I mean, the intent I can understand, John. Where that leads, heaven forbid. I honestly don't know.
Well, the thing is, you have to look at it in the long term. They are hiding behind their terror groups, and I mean, I hold all the Gazan deaths. Hold Iran is responsible for all the Gazan deaths. I
think a lot of people would push back. Look, I think certainly in terms of backing Hamas to do October the 7th, you could make a charge there. In terms of the way that Israel has prosecuted the war, and by the way, I do believe that Israel has a right to self-defense, makes me deeply unpopular, but I think it's absolutely a fact. That does not mean that Israel has carte blanche to do whatever it wants in Gaza, and certainly doesn't have carte blanche at all to do what it's doing in the West Bank, which is a whole other separate issue, which has been regarded as completely illegal by the International Court of Justice. And indeed, a number of Jewish people in this country find it completely and utterly abhorrent too.